And then you copy pasta that long list of coordinates and boom, you get this. It works great. And here's how that looks. Notice that lovely thumping bounce at the bottom that I didn't get to do last time. Here, I have it now. Thank you so much. All right. Ooh, hello. So just like with wild animals, I'm more afraid of you than you are of me. And I am curious, to warm me up, how many of you work with animations, CSS, Web Animations API, JavaScript? Okay, sweet, love it. How many of you like working with them? Okay, that's only a little discouraging and completely unrelated for some private research I'm doing. How many of you work with scraping tools? Oh, come talk to me. I have a dev tool you might be interested in checking out. But we're not here to talk about web scraping. We're here to talk about animation. All right, sweet. I have put my clicker on backwards. Boom, here we go. So a decade ago, we had this thing called Flash. And who remembers Flash? Get your paws in the air. Okay, for those of you who did not raise your paws, pay attention. And I will give you a refresher. It let you do interactive things. It let you build games, interactive videos, cartoons, you name it. And then Steve Jobs said no to Flash on the iPhone. And it took 10 years, but it killed Flash dead. But when this happened originally, Adobe and I teamed up to create something called Alice in Videoland, because Adobe was like, we can build tools with web standards, let's do that. And let's show designers that you can use CSS, JavaScript, and HTML to build things that are just as good as what we were building with Flash. So Alice here uses CSS, and well, it uses jQuery too. Has anyone here not used jQuery? Oh, you sweet summer soul. Anyway, I will buy you a drink. So, it uses jQuery. It uses Modernizer. jQuery, I had to use it. I was going to not use jQuery, but then it turned out like to support gestures, I needed Hammer.js. To support knowing if things were visible, we didn't have intersection observer. I needed like jQuery visible. Waypoints.js to detect when elements were on and off screen. It goes on. It goes on. So it was loaded down quite a bit of JavaScript, but it was still pretty lightweight for the time. And of course, this is an example just to let you know my laundry list of dependencies. 4 years later, Alice inspired a spinoff. I was working with the W3C and MDN to document the new Web Animations API. And we brought her back to do this demo showing things that CSS wouldn't do, but the Web Animations API would. So now it is a decade later, and I wanted to refactor Alice recently to recreate her with modern standards, CSS5, which we will talk about. And there are finally enough animation features that I could do this. So let's recap the web animations for folks who didn't get their paws in the air earlier. How you can think of it is you get a web animation object in JavaScript. It's like a DVD player. It takes a keyframe effect and a timing object. You can think of the keyframe effect as like the DVD. It contains all the visuals, all the timing, etc. And the animation object is the player. You hit play with its play method. This is what a keyframe effect object looks like. It consists of one DOM element, one array of key value CSS pairs. That's the stuff you're going to animate between. And one timing object, which contains how many iterations you're going to do, what the duration is going to be, what the easing is going to be. We'll get into easing. Now, here's how you put it together. You spawn a new animation with new animation. Fancy that. You pass it two things, the keyframe effect object and a timeline. Now, until recently, the only timeline we had was a document timeline, which starts immediately when the tab is opened. It's unique to every tab on your browser, and it runs forward infinitely. It's a hefty thing. And then you hit play. We'll get back to those timelines. So I love Firefox Developer Edition. I wanted to show you how I debug these animations. I'm just going to go off-roading here, perhaps to the chagrin of the organizers. You can see this, right? Yes, good. It looks messy? Excellent. No, we're not going to make it look nicer. So check it out. I'm going to show you why I love the developer tools in Firefox, partly because I helped build them a bit. So these are they. I'm just going to back this up, and I can hit play. I can do it over and over. I can slow it down if I want to If I want to show it super slow, just so I can debug that bounce, I'll show you how I did the bounce. That's pretty cool too. So it lets you scrub, and you can see down here, it'll tell you if the animation comes from the script. That is to say, it's a web animation API sourced animation, or if we go a little bit further up the screen here, you can see that this one comes from animation, CSS animation. And with all of them, we can play them forward, we can back them up, we can scrub through them. But I love how this one also shows you the multiple different, it shows the color change as well. All right, and enough of me gushing about Firefox. No one talks about Firefox anymore, so I wanted to throw it a bone. So, Spring easings. Oh, do you remember having to implement triple and double and quadruple bounces? And whenever you got one of these, either it was going to be stringing a bunch of keyframes together or using a library like GreenSock? Say no more. Now we have a solution for that. All you have to do is add parentheses to the end of that timing function, linear, and then stuff it with a bunch of coordinates that indicate a line. I know, you're thinking, how am I going to come up with all those coordinates? Well, there are tools for that. I love this one. I am running low on time, so I'm going to skip over the live demo here. But basically, you keep adding line segments to it, and then you copy pasta that long list of coordinates, and boom, you get this. It works great, and here's how that looks. Notice that lovely thumping bounce at the bottom that I didn't get to do last time. Here, I have it now. Ooh. Now, previously I used to use a JavaScript library called Scroller when I did this special little effect of moving her up and down the screen. Later, people would use GreenSock for this. Notice how her position on the screen correlates with where the scroll bar is located down the length of the page. Well, we no longer need to use the document timeline. It is no longer the only timeline available to us. Now we can use scroll timeline. It's a timeline that's made from the length of your page, length or width. You can describe that. It takes arguments. Go check out the docs. So to make one, you make a new scroll timeline. You got to make the new scroll timeline. And then when you make your new animation, you hit play, what you do is you pass it that scroll timeline instead of passing it document.timeline. Pretty nifty. If you're using CSS, I imagine we have some CSS connoisseurs in the audience, that's okay. We're just going to use this funky new animation timeline property, which takes a scroll value with little parentheses, which you can use to pass some extra fun variables. Okay. There is a tool for debugging these. They are hell to debug. I will tell you this. I cried many late nights. This is what it looks like. I don't have the time to live demo it for you, but it does show you those little boxes moving in relation to one another. Half the times it doesn't work though. I can't tell you why, but it works with Chrome's dev tools, and it is there for you in a pinch if you need it. There's an offshoot of scroll timelines called view timelines, and these are really cool because it's actually, whereas the scroll timeline scrubs through an animation based on where you are on the page, the view timeline scrubs through an element's animation based on whether or not it's visible. So the duration of its visibility defines the length of the animation's timeline. It gets very meta. All right, so once again, if you're going to make this, instead of using document.timeline, you just make a new view timeline. And the important thing to note here is that it does, let me see if I can use it. Does it work? No, it's not strong enough. I apologize. My laser can't stand up to this Megatron here. But basically, you pass it a subject. This is the thing whose visibility is determining how far through the animation you're getting. That's a DOM element. And then inset allows you to do some offsets. Once again, you make a new animation, you hit play, and you pass it that view timeline. If you love CSS, just use view. Once again, you can see it here as the animation timeline value, and it's taking the inset argument. And because you put it on a DOM element, you don't have to pass it the DOM element. This doesn't work on Firefox. There's a handy polyfill. Go check it out. Don't worry, there's a slide at the end. You can take photos of it if you like, or ask me on Discord. We are still a long, long way from having Flash's animation tools. But there's a growing marketplace for designers who don't want to muck about in the browser's dev tools like me. I just went to Figma's config conference and I asked product designers, do you code? And they were like, no, I use Figma. But there were 14,000 of them, so I consider that a telling sign about how valuable I am in the marketplace. So these people They're into things like Rive. This is a Christmas card I made with Rive once. Does complex animations. I highly recommend you give it a look. But if your team uses Figma, as many people working with design systems do, give a moment to look at Jitter. It exports to Lottie files. Lottie is an incredibly popular motion design format. Does anyone use Lottie? Yes, you work with designers. Awesome. But it also has a marketplace where you can pay to have really beautiful, complex animations and tiny delighters at your disposal so you don't have to have a weird nerd like me on your team. Anyway, take a pic, get the polyfill, try the code, and if you come by, subscribe to my Substack where I talk about how to survive your tech career. I hope you'll make something beautiful.
Thanks, Rachel Lee. All right, a couple of questions came in for you.
Oh, I'm not scared.
A couple of questions and a couple of comments.
Oh.
+1 Firefox Dev Edition. And RIP MooTools, too beautiful for our flawed world. Any thoughts on that?
You know, I was surprised how many people who worked on MooTools later ended up in the orbit of the React team, if not directly laying hands on it.
Yeah?
Yes, it survives. It lives, to quote a science fiction book I like.
Yes, I agree. Okay, what is the tool used as a GUI for getting the points on that linear call?
The GUI tool?
Yeah.
I will put it in the Discord. I'm sorry, I can't quote it. It's a weird subdomain of a weird name that doesn't end in a .com. I can't remember that on the fly. Don't do that to me. I'm older than I look.
Are there things, I just updated, sorry. Are there things you can do with Web Animations API that are not possible with CSS animations?
Oh, I love that question. I totally hid that slide because I have a much longer, like the remaking of Alice epic talk that I give sometimes as a party trick. But the point is, you saw the going down the tunnel. With the Web Animations API, I am able to string each of those animations one after the other to trigger each other, to finally trigger the segue into the next half, which I couldn't do with CSS because CSS is presentational. With the Web Animations API, you can have the animations actually react to user interaction or sequence one after the other. Whereas back when you're just using animations, you kind of have to do timing delays and kind of, you know, like poke at the DOM with a class while you're doing something else over here with the DOM with JavaScript. And it's like, why don't you just use the animation API at this point? Anyway, you can do some really lovely daisy chaining of animations to create an animation that flawlessly runs beginning to end, triggering other things to happen on the page.
Very nice. One question. What are the top Flash features we can't replicate with today's Web Animations APIs?
If I had actually been a top-notch Flash engineer, I could answer that. I'm going to answer it, and it's going to sound very confident. But I want you to know that there out there somewhere, a Flash engineer who does not have a job is like, I object. So, like, take this with a grain of salt. But I believe, as of today, there's very little that we can't do aside from have a great interface to build these things with the Web Animations API. We are missing grouping and sequencing. I don't think they're going to happen. I don't think it's a priority for the web right now, and the web seems to be running out of steam to implement new features. That's great. It's great to be dev complete. But grouping the animations and sequencing. But like I said, you can daisy chain, so you can kind of limp along without them.
What's the rationale for using Web Animations versus CSS animations?
CSS animations, like I said, they're wonderful if you're adding a little extra, especially if you're talking about like clicks and hovers, which are actions that are kind of native, you know, a response. But when it comes to like responding to like post or fetch, or, you know, orchestrating a bunch of things coming on and off the screen, that's when you're going to want the Web Animations API because it's coupled tighter to user input. I think back in the day, we had this whole separation of concerns. You know, there's content, and then there's design, and then there's, you know, interaction, which is JavaScript. Only the problem is animation is design, content, and interaction often. And when that happens, just go to JavaScript.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you for answering those questions. Let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.